together by combining historical, climate, food, and economic data so you can make informed decisions as we shift into a new era. Here's what was, this is what's coming. Our world is never going back to 2019, so what will the new era look like? And most importantly, what is immediate that will affect the pocketbook and the outlook into next year so we can all get ready? Thank you for joining. I'm your host, David DuByne. Right along here with Ransom Godwin tonight. Thank you for joining us in this crazy mixed up world, as the Verve would say. Have you noticed? Suddenly there's a huge problem in El Paso. Right at the same time, the banks are collapsing. Oh, wait, the boogeyman. You know who they're going to blame it on. All troubles are now going to be pointed to the fingers in the southern borders. It's just so quirky, so weird, so strange, the way that it wasn't happening, and then suddenly every single news outlet is on it, as we would say in the South, like a duck on a June bug. In unison, what's the messaging? What's going on? Why did it flip in a matter of days when all the banks are collapsing and reconsolidating into America? There will be one bank. That will be it. Ransom, I'm glad you have some time tonight to spend and try to make sense of the madness that we're seeing. You know, everything's encompassing. It's happening so fast, all encompassing. But that's just on the, the socioeconomic side of things. What about Fuego just hit off today? Not really the giant eruption that was expected, but that whole chain of fires starting to go off. Are we in a magnetic loop again? Are we going to get more volcanic eruptions? Haven't had a chance to really follow today and yesterday's sulfur dioxide plumes that are moving across the planet at 60 degrees north. But as you chat, I'll jump into Null School and windy.com and see if I can mesh us over something. I need to check the silver prices too. Because I've been out all day, totally away from the computer, just working in my farm, out there chainsawing trees that fell down, planting, getting our sheep, building feeders, trying to get the chicken coop a little bit more buffed out. Hey, we're getting turkeys, by the way, and we're going to get geese. So setting up some new quarters for the new protein sources coming in, and I mean eggs, because geese eggs are huge, turkey eggs are large. Meat birds, not really. Egg birds, bigger the egg, more the protein. So anyway, Ransom, I'm glad you joined me tonight, and welcome, man. The floor is yours.
Yeah, you remember last week I pretty much called this about El Paso. I said there was 35,000 people already, maybe more, maybe less. Well, that number turned into what looks like 500,000 people now, and I live right next to it. So the overflow is about to happen. You're about to see this. I don't know. It's right on time, like you said, for the bank failures and everything. And I wanted to show everybody while I'm talking about this. They just flooding over the border. It looks like exactly how I described it last week when I said it's a Black Friday mentality. Now, you see these scenes at the border here. This is the scenes in my opinion, in the next 5 years is going to be something that you see at grocery stores and at food outlets from Europe to the United States. Hopefully not here. Today I was out walking around looking at everything that sprouted that I've planted. The last month there when on the new moon, and everything's just popping up and there's no bugs like usual. So I'm hoping personally, I'm going to have a year of abundance of lots of tomatoes, squash, corn, et cetera, et cetera. But the way it's looking as far as the nation goes, and I did call this, and I was talking about how they already had equivalent to the same amount of people that's in the city that I live in. And it's an hour drive from exactly where I live to the border. And I kind of called this, and with the days leading up to the Title 42 expiring, millions more people are coming. This is just, a little bit of what's about to happen. Things are, I don't know if you want to call it a collapse, because it's like a horror movie in slow motion, and we'll get into that. Banks eating each other, and in the midst of all of this, I don't know if you saw that, but I sent you a picture. It's a graph that was talking about 1 year ago how food prices had skyrocketed since 1 year before that, when the Ukraine-Russia situation first started getting going. And it's so funny. It's like, not to be Nostradamus, but we talked about that all last year, and I brought it up about the drone warfare, etc. And now you're seeing attempted assassination plots on presidents and oil refineries blowing up. And these are all the things we're talking about. Next, it's going to be the hackers. The hackers are doing everything. They're going to, twist that into the bank narrative of, these little banks. And news is across the headlines, so it's starting to catch up. People don't trust the banks with their savings. They don't know if their savings are going to be there tomorrow. I mean, that's what's going on in real world USA. This border thing is crazy because it is what happened to Europe in the past 10 years in fast forward. So it's going to be happening to us a lot faster. And you're going to be starting to see some bizarre stories, Houston, Dallas, etc., Tucson, Phoenix, because these systems that we have to protect, kind of the safety net for our own civilization here. We have these little programs like food stamps and homeless shelters and what do you call them? Food banks and things like that. All that stuff already empty. Now it's going to be completely bankrupt. I mean, where are all these people going to fit into the system? Well, they're going to tell you that you have to pay for it, that for the greater good, you're going to have to get used to, not having as much or not having anything really, because there's already millions and millions of impoverished Americans from the East Coast to the West Coast and everywhere in between. It's not like we don't have third world conditions right here in the USA. I'm sure you know all about West Virginia and people that live along the Appalachians. I live in one of the poorest states in the Union, New Mexico. Then there's Oklahoma and Arkansas and places like that where it doesn't matter the color of your skin. There is poverty by the hundreds of thousands already, and those people are barely being held together by these programs like food stamps and SNAPs and WIC for pregnant women and things like that. You're about to see all of that social programs, and as far as socialism, close up right now because they're not going to have enough resources to hand out to everyone, including the people that are already here. Now, my heart goes out to some of the people that are, desperately trying to get in here. I feel like it's like, when you were a teenager and you looked around all night to find the place to go, and then you finally found out about a house party, and you get there and it's over. The apex of the party already happened and everybody's going home. That's what it seems like America is at this point. It's like a house party that everybody's late to the party. And I don't know, this is just interesting. If you've seen some of the videos coming out, and I did call this last week, there's lines of border patrols with razor wire, fighting off thousands and thousands of people. But guess what? They already let hundreds of thousands of millions of people. A lot of people can't wrap their head around this, that in the past 20 years, upwards to 30 million new people have been added to the population of the United States, and they're still coming. Obviously, there's going to be at some point the straw that breaks the camel's back, because social programs only work when people are producing. And if everybody's having a rough time, then there's going to be a lot less producing, but a lot more demand. And that's the problem we're coming into. This was obviously all designed starting with the first supply chain issues and alleged food shortages until they manipulated it into a global, I'm going to say, a pandemic of hunger is coming. I don't know let me reorganize my thoughts, because that's the way I see it. It's we're straight up in the I forget what that movie's name is with Harrison Ford there in the future, where it's just a mix of everybody is poor on the ground. It was Blade Runner, right, with the fake people and stuff, and you couldn't get any real products. Everything was fake. That's what we're doing right now. I mean, seriously, there's drones flying around in the air. some of them dangerous, some of them are corporate, and I have a feeling that all of this UFO thing is going to be lumped over onto these new technologies and just forgotten about, unless, like I said, this trick of world hunger doesn't work, and it doesn't work out for them like they think. And, because in my opinion, the third world from the Americas flooding into North America is not going to have the same effect that it did from the Middle East and Africa migrating into Europe. And the reason for that is differing ideologies. Even though they want the same thing to happen here, Cloward and Piven style collapse, I don't think it's going to happen, because all of South America and south of the border in North America are mostly Christian people, which means that they're actually going to assimilate pretty easily no matter what happens. And they're not going to get the effect that they think. But one of the effects is going to be that people are going to have to get used to less around until I don't know how many years it would take to recuperate from what I'm watching on live unfold, but it's been coming. And the next thing I predict, like I'm sure I said this last year, so I'm predicting it coming in the maybe this summer or in the winter, a actual combat zone on the southern border between cartels and different government officials. And that's the kind of destabilization that they've wanted. And I have a feeling it's coming to our doorstep right now.
Yeah, you're right about that. The religious aspects of things are going to be similar-ish. There's that core of, Catholicism and Christianity, Protestant, etc. And as we come through, please realize that this is all for the reset. So I bought some great reset books myself here. And let me grab them from my shelf, because I'm looking at these different things here. I got the COVID-19 Great Reset from the World Economic Forum with the blue cover. But I also, excuse me for the long ball talk here, I also picked up, because I want to be able to study this thing and understand it at a deeper perspective. So the Klaus Schwab, Terry Mallory, COVID-19 Great Reset blue cover, which I picked up on Amazon. I also picked up the Great Reset from Mark Morano, who I know personally because of all the climate stuff that we've, done over the years. Not us together, but, we're in that same genre of it's the sun that's driving the climate, and whatever's happening right now seems to be because of changes in the sun and the famines that are inbound and this sort of thing, because you can't control a hungry populace. This is all meant to be, because if you knew the cycles were inbound, you would know that the carrying capacity of Earth can't cope with 8 billion people with shrinking food supplies, jet streams, cloud cells moving into different locations, and this volcanism feed. Okay, and that dropped off, so let me jump back in. I hope that either somebody kicked me off. Thank you, agencies of the alphabet. But when I was looking at it, the carrying capacity of Earth at its current state, when there was functional supply chains, very complex supply chains that were just-in-time delivery, that was available for us to boost the population level to the highest ever. But as we come into these cycles of the sun, well, we start to find things contract during these periods of time. Now, you got to think about this in a nefarious way, and I've talked about this over in North Africa and the Sahel, where there's going to need to be a new food grow zone set up, because we're going to start to lose part of our food growing areas around 45 degrees north and above, or 45 south and below to Antarctica immediately. And that's been ongoing for a couple of years now, very, very distinct numbers coming out, quantifiable, verifiable, that food production is really lacking now in different areas of that part of the globe, anything north. So we're going to have to come up with a new food growing area. So I was saying a lot of that immigration that came from, Northern Africa and the Sahel was sending those people up to, Europe on a one-way trip. They're never coming back, but you were depopulating the new food zones. So there would be no resistance, no, standing army of such. So 10 million people approximately have left North Africa, the Sahel region, and gone to, follow the dream. More money, better jobs, better quality of life, etc. But what they left was their homeland in a very arable, very warm, double rotational crop zone on the planet with a little bit of resources put into that development, pulling the water from the Nubian sandstone aquifer and the sulfur aquifer off of Morocco. And that you're talking about thousands plural of cubic kilometers of water in these aquifers that run through the North African Sahel. We're talking tens of thousands of cubic kilometers of water. You drill down in, you tap that. It's almost like the aquifers in America we've been draining for 150 years, but they've never been touched, really. I mean, there are some wells in some villages, but in the whole grand scheme of things, it's so far off even a rounding error of using that it's really not even, you can't calculate it, really. Like the amount pulled out is instantly replenished by the Mediterranean and also the Atlantic. And then if you go over to the Gulf of Aden side, that, Indian Ocean pulling in from that side. So that continent's surrounded by 3 different water bodies that are continuously pushing through the sandstone filtration and refilling that aquifer. The above ground rainfall is also increasing. You look at the new Renaissance Dam, and that whole Sudan war thing is more about who gets the Blue Nile water runoff, but at the same time, who gets the electricity, who controls that coming off the new Renaissance Dam in Sudan, controls the food growing area of the Sudan, moving into our new phase of a new crop grow zone setting up. But how were they able to do that? Well, everybody's up in Europe. And then I'm looking at this going, all right, well, there's a very open welcome mat here in America right now. Okay. Where's everybody coming from? Well, they're all coming from those same zones of extremely lush, double rotation crop, easy to set up grow zones, and it won't be affected so much by these changes that are inbound right now. But again, mainly, like you said, age of men. I watched a fair few of those videos today, and I was kind of fascinated by it as the media just all in unison pounced on the story. Like they've been trying to put this off for 2 years or something, and suddenly it's on everybody's front page headline stories today from MSNBC, CNBC, CNN. It doesn't matter. Every reporter's down there, BBC. It does not matter. The entire planet is focused on it. But what is the same that has happened between Europe and now the United States? An evacuation, I don't know what you would call it, a dangling carrot to get fighting age men that would be the resistance for you going down to occupy their lands to grow food and export all of that. Because, again, back to the Great Reset books, I got the Great Reset War for the World by AJ and Joe Rogan. Excellent one. And I also got the Glenn Beck Great Reset book. So I have this, The Rise of the 21st Century. So I got these 4 books because within that, it encapsulates a plan. Meticulous. But the thing I'm adding, and I should write my own book on this one, to try to wind those 4 books together as the food production is the key to civilization. Without the food production, we have no society. We have no civilization, period. So through my research over the last many years and what I've seen with the volcanic eruptions over last year and then this year, specifically Shivolution in the last month or so, food production is going to decline, not only from magnetic fields on the sun changing that are moving our jet streams and cloud cells. That occurs every 400 years on a regular cycle. Like that's a known civilization resetter right there by itself. You don't even need anything. except to let the sun take its natural course, and we just literally can't grow enough food to feed the populace. Now, these resets that occurred, keep this in mind. I'm going to throw a couple numbers I want to get. So approximately 8 billion people currently. Now, these last resets that occurred with the sun going into a low magnetic phase, activity phase, otherwise known as a grand solar minimum, there were 500 million or 750 million people on the planet. About 10 times less. Some even 16, 14 times less. Whatever number you want to use in there, 14, 16, we'll make it easy math, 10. Okay, there were 10 times less people on the planet. But what happened then? If we go back to the 1640s all the way until, say, 1690, pretty much that 50-year period, Europe emptied out. And if you look at the Scandinavian countries, they emptied out 90% of the people left because they couldn't get resupply in. The sea ice kept packing in there. They couldn't get the ships in, and winters were so brutal that people just ended up leaving. They ended up 10% of the population stayed. That's all the carrying capacity was in Scandinavian nations without resupply from ship at that point. And the huge amount of government restructuring, all these resource campaigns that occurred at the time. Navy sent out across the planet to look for new trade routes and new kind of spices and sugar and all these things that were brought back. There was a massive era of expansion looking for new resources. That occurred with 10 times, it's actually more 14 times less people. Because if you look at 8 billion and there's 500 million at that time and said 1600s, really didn't ramp up to 750 million people to like 1750. If you're looking at actual population in the years, I wouldn't really mark 750 million people until like 1750, which is really interesting because that was 750 and then 750 million occur in that same time, according to the traditional timelines that were fed on how society evolved. I know we could talk Tartaria all day long, missing history, thousands of years subtracted, but it's just interesting how 750 million people suddenly are there at 1750. Okay, I get a little overlapped on that. But prior to that, you go back in time, there were really not more than 500 million people on the planet, according to traditional history. So the carrying capacity of 500 million was completely disrupted and disturbed by one of these events we're in right now. No doubt about it. The gorilla hail you're seeing or hearing about is just the cusp of the really large stuff coming down. Now, this grapefruit size hail is going to increase along with the wind speeds to become bowling ball size here at the end of this run that we're on. The straight line winds are going to get so ferocious that they're just going to flatten like 100 square mile of crop in a single storm. And then you're going to have multiple of those storms during the growing season. And I'm really not even predicting in the future. I'm only looking at the past and telling you what had occurred during these different times in the past. So now put all this together into our modern day. The transference of wealth is occurring. And if you notice, where is all the BRICS countries? A lot of them are located equatorial, sub-equatorial, massive food growing areas. I know a lot of China is going to go offline up around Heilongjiang and that area border North Korea. But if you come down to like Jiangxi and Guangdong, further south, you're going to have prime grow area down there. Like, look at all the BRICS. It's all Southeast Asian nations. Like Indonesia is a massive food producer. Myanmar can double its arable land. And by the way, a little factoid for anybody that wants to, use this at a party sometime. Myanmar used to be the largest rice producer in the world in the 1960s. Eclipsed even China, because China is all domestic. During that time, they didn't have export market, and they were struggling anyway after the Great Leap Forward. It was like 58. The Great Leap Forward where they killed all the birds, and then the next couple subsequent years, the insects just ravaged that place, and they had massive famine. So the rice exports in the 1960s were pretty much dominated by Burma, or Myanmar now, but it was formerly known as Burma. English control. Largest breadbasket in Asia, period, was that export market out of Burma. Obviously the English, they were in there, they were pounding it, they were using all the land. But think about that right now. Myanmar is only using only half, 50% of its arable land right now. So this area could definitely increase in production. But you look at all the other BRICS nations and the nations that are now fully application into joining the bloc. So you're looking at every single OPEC nation. There's not one OPEC nation that is not now applying to join the BRICS basket of currency, whatever that resource-backed currency is. But then you have all the equatorial nations that are also going to be food producers, but you got all the OPEC nations with their oil producers. But where are they? Okay, so just take account of the Middle East, which every one of those North African, Sahel nations, all the OPEC nations, they all want to join the new BRICS. But what is that? That is 13.5 million square kilometers of grow zone across the Middle East, through North Africa and the Sahel. And keep in mind for a second, America only has 9.5 million square kilometers of growing area. I should say North America. We'll include Canada because they have some lands up there which are quickly shrinking. But that area itself is larger than all combined North American production in terms of land square kilometers. That could be double rotated on a crop. And with all the new investment, think about this, like our system is dead, it's dying, it can't be revamped, the bank collapses are here. But if you're going to do one of the fourth turnings and come back in with Strauss and Howe, that investment, debt structure, debt-based economy needs to restart somewhere. Where is it going to start? It's going to restart with all the grow zones being put and all the investment to go in to set up new grow zones, which will be consolidated in just a few areas on the planet. So imagine that, to be able to control the entire food production system of the planet in a couple hands, in a couple of areas on the planet, and you are the ones that control it and then distribute it out to the rest of the planet. But notice where the BRICS are. I am very serious about this. They are the largest grain producers. You look at Russia and China, Indonesia, these are some massive food producing areas. And then all the periphery Southeast Asian nations, you get that whole equatorial band, and now most of South America, including Brazil and Argentina. Argentina just said they're ditching all dollars. They're going over to the BRICS currency. You're going to UN settle and everything will trade. Brazil and Argentina just moved away from using dollars. Those are the two biggest agricultural producers in South America. And they are moving into, and everywhere you look, the entire shift is here. Now, what is it that everybody else knows that they're not telling the public? And I guess that would be the question there. But anyway, Ransom, I'll let it back to you because I've been rambling for a moment here. But you can see how this thing is kind of set up itself as the new food grow zone, along with the energy, and it's all consolidating into just something that doesn't include any of the West. So something needs to be sacrificed. And the scary thing for me, after reading these books here, parts of them, I haven't read all four of those books in completion yet. I plan to. But what it looks like to me is there's areas that are going to be, they're cutting losses at the moment. Like the debt thing is one part of the banking system. It's totally gone. It can't be redone here in America. It's anywhere in the West. It can't be redone at all. The debt-based system has run its course. It's down to zero. They have to restart somewhere else. So they have to sacrifice. They're going to firewall off the rest of the Western nations because the debt system, yeah, we can produce enough food, maybe. But the economy, it can't keep continuing on its new system. On this new system and the old system do not mix at all. And we're coming into the food shortages. We're coming into the magnetic anomaly. We're coming into, nations against nations, but it's all about the food. You think Kazakhstan? You think Ukraine, or just because of politics? No. Those are the two biggest bread baskets out there. In Myanmar, you heard about them in the news pretty recently because they can expand their production and bring it up 50%. Like I said, previously largest rice exporter in Asia in the 1960s. So what are the random chances? I'm just going to ask a simple question. What are the random chances that Kazakhstan, Ukraine, and Myanmar all are finding themselves in some turmoil? And those are the three biggest breadbaskets on the planet that can ramp up production almost instantly with the right amount of infrastructure. Not even so much infrastructure. They already have that. It just needs the investment. But it looks like the Ukraine's being taken offline right now. So, Ransom, back to you, man.
Yeah, this Brinks thing is pretty trippy because basically what they're doing is they figured out the game. And what's funny is that at the top of the Brinks is still the International Monetary Fund. They're still on top of that. So if the International Monetary Fund is okay with the Brinks, obviously, and the Russia-Ukraine war, is changing the way economic growth is going on there, and then you got China's continued economic growth while the West is shutting down. You can kind of see that they're just playing both sides to the middle, and who knows which side of because there's some really interesting stuff going on. The global elite want to put chips in everyone's head. They want to track you. They want to do this. They have all kinds of fanciful imagination about what they want to do with the world's population and how they behave and act and how they're traded around for currency themselves, the people. So there's a little bit of debate about what's going on with that. And obviously, China is the key to this entire plan, because if you think about it, they can't put chips in billions of people's heads. They can't put chips in billions of phones. They can't put chips in war equipment. They can't put chips in new cars. They can't make smart equipment for your house, like refrigerators, etc. All of these things, because we're dependent on China for those chips. And unless we start digging it up here. And the truth is that there's only certain areas in the world where rare earth elements are in abundance. And where are those places? The only ones that are digging stuff out of the ground basically is China, and China's, stretching its reach into all of those areas you talked about that are going to be Brinks nations all through Africa, Central America, and those are the new growth zones. And it does make you wonder why there's a push by Western powers to move people from those areas up to the northern latitudes and to the what's previously known as the first world countries and destroy them. Because it seems like if you were picking winners and losers like the central banks usually do, you would control that from the top. And it seems like that's exactly what's going on. It's a rearranging of the pieces worldwide to set up for the next stage of things, the Great Reset. The question is who's going to be leading that? Is it going to be the Anglo-Saxon Western powers and the central banks on that side? Or is it going to be the central banks on the other side? And we find ourselves in the same situation we always find ourselves since World War II, the Cold War, et cetera. It's always funded by two sides of the same central banks. It's a worldwide cabal of central banks. And now they have the power to, my question is like, why can't they just go over to the Brinks now and restart the whole debt agenda, the same way that they destroyed the Western world with devaluing their currency and continuing to take on more and more debt, a debt bubble. Now they can just let that fail in the Western world and start debting people in the other side of things, the Brinks nations, because they're going to be needing monies and things to build infrastructure in those places. And it's really funny because there's 50-50 on the news headlines. Like, here's one right here. IMF chief shift away from dollar occurring, but no alternate U.S. currencies exist. And then over here at the Mises Institute, will a new Brinks currency change anything? Maybe. And it goes on talking about that, how these countries can just legislate a new money and then go over to the Brinks with no debt on the newly formed money that they're doing and start the whole debt process over with a different population of the world, while the other half of the world, is being dilapidated and collapsed. There's room, because they've always done this plan where somebody has to suffer for somebody to do good. instead of everyone doing good in an equal, free market system where everybody has their own products from their own countries and they grow their own stuff. And it does make you wonder why millions of people are leaving the best grow zones on the planet to come to a failing nation that can't decide which bathroom to use, and the money's devaluing, and the food prices are going up, and the rent costs are exponential, and land is harder and harder for normal middle class or blue collar people to afford in any place that they would want to live. And you just have this from the top down collapse of the system, the debt system they built over here. But it seems like it's all fresh to all these other people that have lived under these systems, communism and different things, that they might just tempt them with, hey, how about if you have a good credit score and, you behave right, we'll give you this line of credit and you can actually open up a new business in one of these countries and exploit the environment as much as you want, like China does and other countries do, but yet they cut off stuff over here saying that we're killing the environment. It's an obvious, playing the favorites or designed game. They just moving the pieces around and switching the flags. They did the same thing in World War II. A lot of people think that we won the war against the Nazis. You can say that, yeah, technically, according to history, but what really happened is just a reorganization of the program that both sides of the banks, the Warburg brothers in particular, you had one over in the United States and one over funding the Nazis. And then when it was all over, they just pulled down their flag and everybody got new jobs, either in the newly budding Soviet Union and that technological, mechanism that they were doing over there to be the other example against us, where the other half of all of those employees, because that's what they were employees, and they moved over here and they started building our industry and starting our programs over here, our alphabet agencies, CIA, all of these things that happened over here that are directly connected to the scientific experiments and the rearranging of borders and all of that stuff before. They didn't get their United Nations that they really wanted. And, the previous war before that didn't get the League of Nations like they wanted, but they never failed to stop trying, and they're doing it again. The question is just which type of future are they going to let the governments have? Because it looks like, plainly to me, that the United States is either going to have to go to war with China in a kinetic war and beat them, or make a deal with them so that we can get all the chips that we need for this totalitarian nightmare of transhuman nonsense that is being pushed on the Western world while we collapse.
Yeah, look at that. I have a couple of thoughts on World War II and myself. I don't know if it was destroying the rest of the Antiquitech that was around prior, that because of this new post-$45 economy, Bretton Woods, there could be no free power. Because you got to understand, to set that whole structure up, we could only buy oil. Everybody could only buy oil, only use dollars for oil. Everything had to be the homogeneity of oil sales in dollars to have free power and magnetic motors and Earth's magnetic field generated power devices on demand in homes. Would not have allowed that, what we've seen in real time, anybody awake with your eyes now, the end result of that in 45 moving forward. Because I'm looking at now, I'm really looking at the Earth as just nothing more than a farm, really just a farm. Because, if you think in earnest about sound and magnetism, they're really connected. They are. Sound and magnetism. Think about it. Sound creates a magnetic field. And those moving magnetic fields create the electricity in that order. So think about sounds of frequency and vibration from the voice, the thoughts, the news, the music, and everything that's tuned in different harmonies and frequencies. 440 versus 432. Like the sound is what creates the field. And the energy within the field can then move. And if we're talking about electricity, which is also a trippy thing, I think I've spoken about this once before. You know, the electric company doesn't deliver electricity to your house as you think of it. They're shooting this electricity down the wire. They're creating the magnetic field for that charge to ride on top of the wire to deliver to your home, which is mind-blowing in itself. But sound and magnetism being connected. And now we come into the sorrows times of wailings and screams. Can you imagine what kind of vibratory pattern that's putting out? Versus happy, joyous sounds of singing and vibration and happiness and chantings and this vibration pattern. I mean, the money needs to be moved from one part of the world to the next. So when you were responding to my comments about, you know, setting up new grow zones, why don't we just start instantly and move that? Well, it can't be done in that fashion because there would be too much wealth lost in that instantaneous movement. It needs to be continuously drawn out. And if I do interpret what I'm seeing around the world in real time in front of me, if the sound creates the magnetic fields, that the magnetic fields then move the electricity, the amount of negative sound created in this matrix is something's feeding. That's why I keep coming back to the farm. We're at the farm. So just like we've set up a huge amount of new fences on our property here in the last week and a half, we're trying to rotational graze our sheep. Originally, we had them in an area, and we would let them out in the 2 acres that was fenced in, and then we'd try to get them back in the evening. Originally, they did follow us when we had, you know, we were using horse feed. For anybody out there, if you're going to raise sheep, use the 12% protein horse feed. You can get that in a 50-pound bag, although it's gotten expensive lately. So we, you know, there's tons of, you know, flowers and all kind of emerging, you know, greenery coming around during the springtime. These sheep are super happy. They're nibbling everything out there, 2 acres. But the problem is we're trying to plant in the fence line. And then they started eating all of our wine vines too. Now they're eating, you know, we're like, whoa, you guys got to stop. You can't eat the muscadines. You got to stay away from the white and red grapes. But they were starting to eat all the leaves in the fence line already. So we're like, this is a problem. So we're building it in and we're fencing it off. And we got 3 areas along a fence. It's probably like half an acre. But each day or so, we're going to move them to a different part. And then they come back and they sleep because they don't really eat except the feed we give them. And they don't really munch the grass around this one containment area that, like, quote unquote, put them to bed. There's lights around it. Our dogs can get around on the sides to prevent the coyotes from coming in. But Earth is being managed in very much the same way. If we think about rotational grazing with the sheep, it's no different from moving one area that has been overgrazed or has outlived its usefulness into another. Now it will rest, and the rains will be here tomorrow, and those grasses will grow again, and they will be vibrant in 3 to 4 days. And we can move those sheep back into there again and let them regraze once more. This planet is a farm. Your work is being harvested. Your life energy is being harvested. Your life force is being harvested. And if you look at it as whatever is controlling this planet as a farm is no different than us taking milk from the cow or taking the eggs from the chicken or taking the meat from a bird. No difference. You know, you got to look at scales from the solar system out into, you know, different star systems and different constellations within our local system here. Let's say in the spiral arm of the galaxy. Because you look at the planet here, our planet, you know, how old is it truly? Is it 4.5 billion years old, as they say? Okay, I'll give you 5 billion. We'll use the number 5 billion years for the Earth. Well, there's some other planets and star system out there, very regionally, very much closer to us that are, you know, double the age of our planet. See, even if it's only 20%, let's say it's 1 billion years older than us. There's something that has had technology and sentient life that has developed tech on a billion-year time frame way ahead of us. So what if you rocked up to a pristine planet only inhabited by Sasquatch and only inhabited by Neanderthal or some type of the ancient ones that were here, and that was it, and the planet was like, this movie Avatar really kind of blew my mind because, yeah, it was great, great, visuals and things. Number one, I saw number two, it wasn't that good. Number one, the way they went to this pristine planet, that everything was in symbiosis. Everything was in stasis. Everything was harmonious. Everything was living within a living ecosystem on top of itself in a certain vibratory pattern that was pure and undisturbed. They didn't understand the harvesting of trees, the harvesting of minerals, because that would throw out the magnetic balance of things. But what if you had technology 500 million years advanced and you came to this same planet? Would you not scrape it for its resources? Would you not farm it for its, what do they call that? Human resources. I mean, they tell you exactly what it is right to your face, even in the corporate world. You are a human resource. No different than an animal resource, a mineral resource, a fisheries resource, a forestry resource. It's to be cut, used, harvested, processed, and the end product comes out for somebody else to sell in a different market. Now, whether that market is on Earth or whether it's off Earth, either or. So this, and I'll say one, I went a little off topic here, but I will say one thing. It seems that I did a video on this just yesterday. If anyone wants to go to the Adapt 2030 channel and check it out. Anytime there's news of a huge amount of BRICS or countries that put applications in to join the BRICS nations, it seems several more banks collapse in our Western world on cue, in unison, because now they're going to start to use that as weaponized news because they know if 5 countries are going to get a 10% reduction in bank stocks or equities across the Western world. And 19 countries came out just days before we've had this latest bevy of collapses. So what's the random happenstance of a month and a half ago when Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, etc., all started to have runs on their banks? The same thing, the unison build-in of everybody's moving to BRICS, and they named a bunch of nations from United Arab Emirates to Pakistan to, look at the list. It was about 12 back then. But you have to think about the money's in movement, because those with true wealth start to see, wow, if Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates all say they're going to start moving over to the BRICS, well, maybe I'm going to move part of my portfolio and move my money straight into their banks, straight into their stock markets, because whatever it is, you could literally be blind and throw a dart on the board and something's going to increase in value in these really, really emerging markets. So you start to see these massive bank withdrawals anytime these countries are named that are joining now the BRICS or have applied to join BRICS, because it's in motion. It's going there. And once these countries get there, and they're all part of this unified financial block with gold-backed currency, resource-backed currencies, everything is just going to go to the moon and beyond. I don't care what you put your money into, you're going to 10x, 100x it for sure. If me and Ransom were to have the same conversation 10 years from now, and you were to look at some of these markets that were in their infancy now or emerging markets, they're going to be equivalent with some of the largest markets we have on the planet. So every time the new BRICS nations are announced that they're applying for, me as an investor, if I don't have that kind of money, I'm just saying if let's say I had $100 million, or if I was a billionaire, I would definitely take hundreds of millions out and go, wait a second, Argentina's going away from the US dollar. They're joining BRICS. They're going to have all their agricultural production tied to their, share of the BRICS currency. They're going to tie it all to ag. Okay, I'm going down into Argentina. I'm investing in anything ag because I know that that's what's going to be the pledge to the new currency. Forget the US dollar. I'm pulling it all out. We're going down to Argentina. We're going to go to Brazil. We're going to head over to Indonesia. We're going to go into Thailand. We're going to go here, and we're going to spread our money around because anything it touches is going to make billionaires trillionaires and millionaires billionaires. This is how the money's going to flow. It's a slow wealth extraction. So I'm telling you, I really firmly believe from the bottom of my heart, really saying this, that anytime there's these major announcements of more countries by name joining into the BRICS and actually applying to join the block of gold-backed, resource-backed currency, that there's going to be more runs on our banks and Western banks in unison as people go, wow, there's another huge opportunity. Whoa, I need to take my money out of American market and put in all these new, they just said they're going to go in there. Awesome. Sudan's going in, Yemen's going in, Nigeria's going in, Tanzania's heading there, Kenya's going in, South Africa's there, Zimbabwe, well, that's an underexploited. Imagine if they get their finances in order again and they got all that gold mining up there still. Mozambique's heading in there, Malawi's going in. Damn, look at the possibilities in all those really small markets if you were going to spend and swoop some of your capital into those markets. Look for it in the news. Every time you see a major announcement of like 5 more countries, 10 more countries applying to join the BRICS, we're going to have a bank run every single time. That is the money moving to the new emerging markets. So anyway, Ransom, I go on too long sometimes. Please jump back in. We're coming off. Bring us on to the break.
Yeah, well, you could totally see that they could just switch transformation of wealth, as Obama called it there. The biggest transformation of wealth in history has been happening since 2000 and a nonstop rapid pace to right now. And we could see it starting to collapse. And, when you say that, it makes me think that there's a big key component that a lot of people aren't thinking about, is that a lot of these families and politics and what we would call the elite have also planned ahead, just like what you're talking about. And you can just look, as they say, follow the money at what they're investing in to see what the trends are going to be, what they already have planned them to be. And you got to think about this. I wonder, here's a question for you as we go into break. Are the countries that have these emerging growth zones, or not emerging because they're already great growth zones, they're just some kind of reason why it's not being utilized or whatever, are those areas, are those countries the same countries that are applying for BRICS? Is that the same countries that also have these massive aquifers? And then, if so, who are the people that own those aquifers that are investing in those? Because I can think of what, we were talking about World War II, the Bush family, they started in the metals and they were helping certain somebodies over in Europe and they got in trouble for that. But hey, all's forgiven. And then, we skip to the future where the grandchildren are plummeting and destroying the Middle East for fabled weapons of mass destruction and killing millions and millions of people. But that same group of people also decided to invest in a bunch of aquifers down in Argentina, which is, bizarre. Why would they pick that specific area to buy in? But they're not the only ones that do things like that. You have T. Poon Bickens, or I could never say that guy's name. But anyway, the other millionaire that likes to, invest in the railways and the aquifer here in the United States. So it's funny. The games that are about to be played about transferring this wealth around to the new areas. And it doesn't make sense that the people from certain countries would leave some of the most fertile, best growing area on the planet and then come here to witness the collapse of looking like the collapse. I think it can still turn around, but as we go into this new reset, makes you wonder which side of the reset are you going to be on? Are you going to invest in the right things? Are you going to do the right trends to make it out on the other side and have your children and their children be able to navigate the new world?
They don't call it the New World Order for no reason. We'll be back after the break. Please remember to stock up and get your preps in order as we move through these challenging times. David DuByne, Ransom Godwin. We'll see you after the break.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
I've never realized a time that was more necessary to make sure you have a backup of food than there is right now. We see all of the food markets going expensive, every item. And some of these items that they offer in these kits are approximately $1.50 to $2 a meal or serving, which is quite a bit cheaper than anything that you're buying now. I'm really interested in the protein pack, because this is where, even if you're gardening and you're not going to have these proteins, but you can stack them back. And this thing has chicken, beef, eggs. So it has a lot of protein that maybe you could mix with the stuff that you're growing. I'm really thinking that this summer is going to be starting all of the hard times as far as it is for people with food. So I think this, beyond any other time that you've thought about buying storable foods, is probably the occasion to give yourself some insurance so that when hard times come and the trucks stop coming, you have a backup plan. At least you have nutrition to get you by. And some other people are not going to be doing that. They're going to be having difficulties and maybe even finding themselves in aggressive situations with hundreds of other people trying to get supplies that are no longer there. And these kits have everything. Fruit, you got the meat. It's all stuff that you're going to need to survive. The insurance that people need right now, I just don't think there's ever been a comparable time other than maybe when, we had soup kitchens in the 20s and right again in the 40s when things were becoming thin again. And we're in that time now. And when you start looking at world events, you can see that the food supply is going to be tied up with multiple different events around the globe. And you don't have to worry about those things if you have this taken care of. You can get 6 weeks, you can get months, depending on the size of your family. This is definitely insurance for survival, because other people are going to be fighting over the scraps that are left at the store, and you don't have to do that.
Yeah, you mentioned something there, the seeds as well, to be able to grow some of your own food in addition to having stored foods. But when it goes down, it is going to go down. And things that you think about it right this second, everybody's talking about buying gold and silver as a way to hedge against inflation or be able to have something to be able to pay your property taxes in the future. With the devaluation of the currency, well, it will be the exact same thing. Now, do you have enough money to buy an ounce of silver? Perhaps you do. It's the same thing with food preps. The 1 week kit compared to something like a full 6 weeks kit or a 12-week kit. Even if you get just one small minimal thing to add to your stack. I talk to people who prep all the time. It's always about tools, storable foods, water filtration, and a way for you able to store water and filter it at the same time. Because if you can get that closed loop enough, there's always going to be somebody that will help you garden with those seeds. Heirloom seeds is where you want to go. Heirloom open pollinator seeds. Because at the end of the day, when you collect those seeds at the end of your season for growing, you want to be able to store those and then have them so you can replant next year. I think that supply chains are going to start constricting even further. I mean, look at the way that the world laid out. These really incredibly complex supply chains are now starting to fracture in the middle of everywhere. Political strife. We didn't even talk about the ozone depletion event that's going to wipe out food production further in the Southern Hemisphere. The tipping point. Humanity's here. We're seeing it everywhere. So how do you protect your friends and family? Because you got to think everybody has survived. We would not be here having this conversation if people had not survived the last 8,000 or 10,000 years of events that were far greater than what we're going to experience. It just takes a little prepping, a little bit readiness, and I do believe that we'll be able to get through this.
when we're talking about these seeds and the storable foods to go with it, you're going to have to probably invest in both of these ideas. When you go through the list of the seeds that they give you, these heirloom seeds, they're the best type of food that you could possibly get or grow yourself. But you have this backup of the food storage that lasts 25 years.
And that's heavensharvest.com. Use the code ADAPT at checkout. That's ADAPT. Take 15% off your order.
Whatever comes your way, weather, war, whatever it is, you're prepared. You have security. At least you know that your belly's going to be full so that you can continue on the work that needs to be done to stabilize everyone's life around you.
Ransom Godwin and myself were talking about, how this food is so integral and how the money is following the food and how these bank runs that you're seeing are moving from one sector of the world into those who have decided that they're going to join the BRICS nations. Well, that's just like a no-brainer. Imagine like 2015, if you would have thrown your money, anything crypto, if you would have equally weighted across anything in crypto at that point, like, $100 on each one, they're only like 30 at that time, or even $50 on each one. You spend $1,500, put $100 on each one. You got Bitcoin for like, $1.50 and thing. If you would have put any money in there, just threw your money in there and just waited, you wouldn't even have sold anything until today. You would have got the you wouldn't have a Litecoin, but you got the Ethereum for like under $5. Yeah, you would have had Litecoin at $1. You could have gotten the Bitcoin for, like I say, nothing. Think about that point. Even go back to 2013, there were like 5 cryptocurrencies. If you would have put $100 in each one back in 2013 and just waited, you'd be a multimillionaire now. Because think about picking up Bitcoin at 10 cents and putting $100 in there. You're talking thousands of Bitcoin at $60,000 each, back at the highs. This is no different than people who are taking the money now, those with wealth, and moving it over into a BRICS-aligned nation that is just an emerging market. There might be some risk a little bit because, the whole dollar dominating everything, and any 1 second your country could be invaded if you didn't agree with the day and you didn't put your dictator in power to keep American interests flowing with the minerals or the oil or whatever was deemed necessary for the American empire to continue. And if you did not or deviate from that, you were taken out. That's changed. That's done. So most of these smaller markets are going to become behemoths in just a few short years. And I really mean by 2030, 2035, some of these emerging markets that you never heard of are going to be powerhouses on their continents. Go down to Malawi and take a look at the ocean resources and the ports that they have down there. Mozambique. Yeah, you might hear about the island and whatever. You heard of it. There's some floods, there's some runoff and thing, but the ports and the geostrategic locations, markets, processing, labor, etc. I mean, all these emerging tiniest of nations are going to have just powerhouse economies moving forward. So how do you take that? And, thanks for Revolution Radio allowing us to talk some of these points. If you consider free speech, whatever's left of it, valuable, consider keeping this station right on air here. Revolution Radio donate tab, many ways to donate. It's right up there on the browser bar, right at the top. Because having conversations that allow us to try to sync up different events across the planet can help us, spin and move the Rubik's Cube of our own safety and communities as we move through these changes. I'll come back to the story. I think I've told it once or twice before. Since we mentioned World War II earlier in the program, there was a guy in Australia with his family who was absolutely sure World War II was like literally over the horizon, just a sliver, like he could see it inbound. And you got to realize Australia in 1940s, early 1930s, late 1930s, early 40s, was like, really remote in itself. And he was like, even this Australia is not safe enough. I am going to go to the most remote place on the planet nobody's ever heard of. The war will never reach there. This is going to be just so ridiculously remote that nobody will ever find it. And this war is just going to pass us over, and we're going to chill out on an island in the Pacific called Guadalcanal. Like, up to that point, it took them almost a month to get up there. And from Australia to Guadalcanal, what you understand today is just, a lightning fast flight, or, but that time you had to take, freighters up there. And then, they were traveling with a lot of luggage, and they were taking all their belongings with them as a family to move up to this island called Guadalcanal, which nobody ever heard of. The war would never get there. It was so remote, man. Nobody would ever even consider taking this spot. It was worth nothing. It was an island in the middle of nowhere. They're like, copra, C-O-P-R-A, which is a dried coconut, was their main export at the time. They're like, sheesh, that's not worth anything to anybody. There's no oil resources, no mineral resources. Nobody wants this island. We're going to be totally left alone up there. Guadalcanal. And that's where this guy chose to take his family. Yeah. So things can change in an instant. And before we went on the break, I was also talking about silver. So I did, Ransom, jump on here over to take a look at a few silver prices, and I'm over on AppMex, by the way, which I don't get any commission from or anything. I just know a bunch of silver selling sites. So I try to use this is sort of like in the middle, not super expensive, not super cheap. Treasure Island Metals, if you want to go there too. I don't get any commission from them. Not saying anything. I'm just saying these are, some places you could look for comparison of metal prices. So I'm over here looking at the American Eagle, and currently, if you're going to use a credit card to buy this, $49.35 per ounce for American Eagles. But then I look up and say, that's pretty expensive. I know the most expensive one for me, at least through history, has been the Libertad, which is the Mexican 1 ounce coin. And then I look over there, and credit card, $49.29. It's 10 cents cheaper than an Eagle now, which was unheard of. So what is happening with silver prices? Like, even if you go to something like the Philharmonics, you're still going to look at, $33.66 for a 1 ounce round. And unbelievably, the cheapest of anything that I could find so far as we were on break, scraping through all the different types of sovereign issued coins, was the Silver Britannia, which is $32.61. Now, these prices in themselves are ridiculously unheard of. Perth Mint, the Kangaroos, well more expensive than that. Krugerrands, because I was talking about South Africa, more expensive than that. Philharmonics, more expensive. Maple Leaves, which generally aren't too bad in price, $36.78 right now for a maple leaf. So look at this and go, whoa, something is breaking already in terms of inflationary pressures if they're pricing this in U.S. dollars. So, even this metals, there's a huge amount. Like, once the real people understand, because gold went over the actual all-time highest price ever today for a few hours briefly. And then it pulled back to $2,060. So if you're looking to buy any gold out there, and again, I'll say American Eagles because, any of these sovereign issued coins, they're super well known, and, nobody's going to really try to counterfeit Eagles because it's American currency. It's like trying to counterfeit a $20 bill. Any things that sovereigns, especially on the 1 ounce level, a lot of people, there's so many security things in it when you're looking at coins. Now, if you're going to do a 10 ounce bar, a lot of people try to counterfeit those 5 ounce bar because you're talking like $10,000, a 10 ounce bar, $20,000, fill it with tungsten, etc. But the 1 ounce coins are really difficult to counterfeit. They have multiple security measures across these things, and it's a sovereign nation's actual issuance. With that being said, American 1 ounce gold Eagle today is selling for $2,339. That's way up. Imagine the COVID time, that stuff is $1,700 is what you were getting it for. So wherever you look right now, these prices are starting to run away. Now, it will take about 1/5 of an 1/8 of a second for the general public to understand if you get one coin, you could pay off your house as this hyperinflation moves through. Got 300 million Americans. You got how many millions of Australians, New Zealanders, anybody that's just in this Western aligned block. Like, think about how many hundreds of millions of people are in Europe. Now, what if they all just want like 1 ounce? 1 ounce. You're talking billions of ounces to protect yourself from hyperinflation. And this is where coming in to try to protect your wealth and all these changes, a lot of platforms you can't really talk about this. So Revolution Radio, again, thanks for letting us on here and spin through some of these ideas. But Ransom, this massive retail money outflow and deposit runs and bank runs and all that, it's just going to continue. I mean, we're in the feedback loop now. Do you really see us going back to stability in these banking markets and silver pricing, gold pricing, or do you think we're like at runaway now where it's actually gone off the hill and that snowball's getting bigger? It's like those crazy videos you see of avalanches coming down slowly, boom, and then suddenly.
I definitely think the paper money could just all of a sudden be worthless. But, judging from history all the way back to ancient times, I don't think gold or silver will ever be one of those types of money that are not worth anything. Someone's always going to recognize the value of gold and silver, even if it's just off of the name, itself. And I was showing a lot of those coins, and you can just imagine how many people actually are getting, the real money and hiding it. And it's the same thing that happens before every war. I mean, you think back, that's exactly what people try to do, is hide a lot of their wealth in their jewelry and different things in their coin collections and hide their coins. Unfortunately, just like you said, no matter where you are in the world, including right here in the United States, things can turn on a dime, so to speak, a mercury silver dime. In fact, things can turn, and a war that you don't think is going to touch you where you live can all of a sudden one day reach out and touch you. And we kind of know that anyway. All of the events that happen worldwide are going to continue to happen as far as natural phenomenon, hurricanes, earthquakes, and those kind of natural disasters, volcanoes. Those are things that we can't do anything about. But you can plan ahead as far as it goes for, things that people might do, which is that a combat zone may, end up being where you live. If you don't believe me, ask all those people that, live in that area all through Europe that seems to get a peaceful life for some time. And then the next thing they know, they're in war. I saw this article one time about a lady who left in World War I, and the new place that she settled, she had to leave again in World War II. And it was just, ironic that twice in her life, she thought everything was stable and it couldn't go bad. And then boom, there it is. And, when we're looking at the border and we're looking at prices and we're looking at the geopolitical instability going on worldwide, we got to keep in mind that there are masters behind this, and they do have the power of the best of everything, the best technologies, the best artificial intelligence. And I was just showing an article there, the UK and US intervene amid AI industry's rapid advances. Right now, the global elite and the powerful, the people with money, billionaires, are using AI in an unfair advantage. Now, keep in mind, these people are also investing in the silver and gold markets and all of these other markets, and they have the best artificial intelligence working on their behalf, outbidding, investing in different things. Not only that, they have the ears and the mouth and the backup of politicians worldwide. So we know that, they get heads up. As we know right now, there's several people in sitting positions in U.S. politics that have openly inside traded. And, it's okay because they make laws to protect themselves and allow them to do it, but not the public. So the public never gets a chance to have that same foresight. But I kind of argue that it's just that people aren't paying attention to what they're doing. And, they kind of tell us what they're doing with headline after headline, because we know that the political establishment and the mainstream media go toe to toe and hand in hand and two-step the public into a naive, dreamlike state by giving them constant fear factors of things that they shouldn't be afraid of. There's no shortage of that, but then they deny things that are actually happening in reality. Don't believe your lying eyes. And you can see the instability happening. And that has nothing really to do with the new people coming across the border by the millions. However, those two contributing factors are going to combine to create a unique situation for us here, as all of the jobs are gone. And the multi-billion-dollar companies are not planning for a future of a strong labor force. In fact, they're planning for a future of a smaller population of subordinate worker class people. And a lot of people make this point when we talk about the future of AI and robotics, that if they keep making robots where they fill every job, what are the people going to do? And the answer to that is, you're going to do whatever you're told to do, because you indeed are going to be part of the system. And it's funny that you brought up that movie Avatar, because I just watched the sequel to that last night. And, not to mess it up for nobody, but it's basically the same movie. But they do point out that, you have these different groups of humanoids, and, you find yourself rooting for those humanoids to kill the humans, because the humans are the corporations and represent capitalism in this fictional tale. And, they do put a truth in there about the bad ways that some billion-dollar corporations get away with their form of capitalism, destroying and putting out chemical waste and deforestation and other things. And they do highlight that. And in the movie, it's weird because they give you a new focal point of the plot of the movie. It's no longer about just the planet and reaping its resources and its ore and different things, but no, there's a species on the planet that looks weirdly just like a blue whale or a humpback whale, and its brains make people live forever, literally. So that's what the whole thing's about. But they throw in this green movement kind of fictional stuff, blaming people that use products as the culprit, when actually they're the people that make these programs, make the laws, and they're the ones pushing forward all of these destructive corporations that do these things, because they don't favor the mom and pops farms and stores and things like that of the old United States. How things used to be set up. So they've closed all that down. But like you were talking about before, they have all of these new areas that they have yet to I don't know if rape is the right word, but new areas to, bring into the economy with new peoples that haven't, fallen for the same trick many times. So it's like they're done with us over here. But it goes back to this AI. What are you going to do for a living when here's the headlines that are out there? Employers to cut 14 million workplaces globally by 2027. And if you open it up, it's a article from Sputnik. And I know the Russians are supposed to be the bad guys, but Sputnik's a pretty good news source compared to some of the others that are out there so far that I've noticed. Employers to cut 14 million workplaces worldwide by 2027, the World Economic Forum. So it's not really from Sputnik, it's from the World Economic Forum. And it's talking about how employers across the globe are planning to create 69 million workplaces by 2027, making it sound really good. But at the same time, shutting down 83 million workplaces, which will result in a disappearance of 14 million workplaces. And they're saying it's only 2% of the current global employment. I don't know where they get these figures, because they know that many countries around the world, although people do work all day, it's not the same kind of employment that runs economies as far as paychecks, 401ks, investments, and things like that. So we know that gold and silver are a backup, and it always have been. That's why governments always make those things illegal right before they're about to have a bad time. And it's so funny that you say that. The same article we were talking about, the Brinks, fits with the gold and the silver. IMF chief shift away from dollar occurring, but no alternative to U.S. currency exists. Well, of course there is. There's always been gold and there's always been silver. So really you can't go wrong with that. But back to the AI and the robots, they are indeed, just like on those Pandora movies, going to incorporate this thing where cities have these robotics and they are doing most of the automation, which puts the American worker or any worker for that fact around the world out of business because, they're going to use things like, well, there's child labor and there's this and there's that for more and more reasons why human beings don't work. And in the transition period, they're going to have to do something to appease the masses. And I think what that is a universal income, which is basically a worldwide program that's going to be pushed out on people. That's basically welfare. They found that welfare works. It destroys the nuclear family. It destroys ambition. It destroys entrepreneurship. It destroys all of these things because it's a safety net that's used in the wrong way and incentivizes the wrong kinds of behavior. But whenever these governments switch around, if you've noticed, they talk about these smart cities and private cities and things like that. If you look at the destinations they're going to all the countries the millions of people are leaving in migration. So it does make you wonder, what is the plan for the next world, I guess, the new world order. And that seems to be a redistribution of the wealth to new places so they can exploit new areas and new peoples. And at the same time, like you said, David, I think it's a very important mention that most of the people that are leaving and going to the northern latitudes are military-age men, which means that in those countries, whenever they implement some kind of tyrannical rules which exploit the country, its land, and its people, there will be no massive amount of resistance because all the military-age men went north for welfare, went north for easier, what they thought was going to be an easier life. But meanwhile, it's shutting down here. The jobs are disappearing. The resources are drying up. And we're having a main worldwide competitor to the money, which is the Brinks, and all of these other countries that have felt like that they've been taken advantage of by the West are have their arms open to China and Russia for exploitation. And of course, they're going to do that. So that brings us back to this weird dystopic future in which they have to have everybody with these little devices and technology for a complete track and trace system, a social credit score, and all of these things. In order to achieve that, we have to have a unified front as far as totalitarian government. And that means we either have to beat China or join them. And I think what they're doing is secretly joining them. But at the same time, it's a theater of war. And I think we're going to get a repeat of World War II, where it seems like it's clear cut, black and white, the good guys, the bad guys. But in reality, the same bozos at the top of the central banking cartels are the ones making money hand over fist while they take people's lands, their resources, and slowly evaporate their freedom in each little country that traditionally had a border and had its own national sovereignty, which was a protection against worldwide tyranny. But we're seeing that disappear, where there's only two factions, and we already know how that works out. They practiced it with the Cold War. It'll just be a new cold economic war for a period of changeover. It's kind of the growing pains for the New World Order. And during that time, we're going to see all of these kinetic wars, which we're already seeing unfold, and also starvation. And not starvation because the world can't produce enough food, but starvation because the powers that be are not allowing it to either grow or to be transported or sold or bought by specific people around the world.
Yeah, cut off one of the largest natural gas feedstock pipelines, and then your fertilizer production's gone across Europe. And please remember, tailing on to this statement, the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides are all produced from that same set of rearranged chemical chains, long chain, short chain. So you got to think about oil in a barrel. You have that really heavy stuff, bitumen at the bottom, and then you have the ultralight stuff that's aviation fuel at the top. And everything between that barrel can be rearranged in terms of how long those molecule chains are. If they're really, really, really short, they're gases. If they're really, 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 really long, then they're tar. So imagine if you had the chemical ability as an alchemist to rearrange molecular bonds to change something to a gas that was a liquid, or change a gas into a pelletized version of a gas. That's literally what we're talking about, is modern day alchemy. By rearranging natural gas, CH4, or you're actually taking the sulfur out of if you're looking at somewhere in the Caspian Sea, really heavy sulfur, remove the sulfur first, then you're going to refine that. If you're looking at Saudi Arabia, you got the light sweet crude, heavy sour crude includes all of the sulfur. We're involved in modern day alchemy, and without the feedstock, you just can't produce anything that we need to improve agricultural output. So even just Europe going down alone has limited 40% of global availability of fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides. Just that alone, we lost 40% of available input to boost crop production. That's huge. That's truly huge. And, you talked about AI there. I've been researching AI because I understand it's the next change. It's as integral to understand it as it is to understand the internet. I had a friend of mine over today earlier, and it was like, man, you can't really allow that to, use that to run your life, to produce your content and all these things, because what are humans going to do? We have to stick together as a species, because this AI is just, mind altering for me to even try to understand, how it works. So, back to the principle of workforce in itself before this universal basic income comes in. And I hope it is a catalyst for creativity and spiritual evolution in the human species and the Homo sapiens sapien, by allowing all of this free time, which would have been occupied by work time, that now gives you bountiful free time. But the problem is that thing's running over there on the left at trillions of calculations per second. It's evolving and turning into its own consciousness. Because Lee Iacocca, if we go back to the 1980s, I know some of you listening tonight were not even alive in the 1980s, but thank you for joining. Really, thank you for everybody out there spending your valuable time right here listening to the conversation, so we can all come up with solutions together as a unified thought body of human consciousness, thinking of solutions for what we are in today. But Lee Iacocca in the 1980s goes over to Japan, and we're looking at these U.S. factories here. I'm talking mainly about auto manufacturing lines, Chrysler, Dodge, etc. Just clunky behemoths, barely functional, 20,000 employees coming on a single shift, no robotics, everything's hand welded. You're putting like one flat piece into a press mold, and like nothing. Okay, break time, everybody, 30 minutes. Lee Iacocca rocks back over from Japan and is like, we're going to cut this down, lean manufacturing. We're going to slash the workforce by 75%, and we're going to put in robots, and we're going to produce these cars in, triple the time and half the cost, and we're going to improve from that point. That's our base point. And then they just rocked it. And you saw how quickly the auto manufacturing changed with, that lean manufacturing coming in from the Japanese style. Lee Iacocca brought that in. Well, we are in a lean workforce with the new AI. You have to think about this. Whoever understands how to do the prompts is going to replace anybody who does not know how to do prompts. Even for the chat GPT. Forget about auto GPT and heading up GPT-4 and auto GPT. If you're not even understanding that lexicon yet, I'm sorry, you're like years plural behind in terms of how fast this thing's evolving. I mean, I'm just trying to understand it. And by the time I even understand what I was trying to use to create better titles for my YouTube videos, just using it at that little basic level. Excuse me, I had to sneeze there. I'm already months behind just even delving into the basic use of it. Like, it's running away so exponentially fast that the workforce right now If we look at the carrying capacity of the Earth, and we understand that with the solar magnetic fields changing, there's only going to be a certain amount of food produced, that our workforce is an actual human resource, or the amount of humans on the planet is going to be reduced greatly just through famines here, just from changes coming from the sun's magnetic fields, which shift our jet streams and our cloud cells, our planting and our harvesting dates. That in itself is going to create a massive cascade of human loss here out of the workforce and the quote unquote human resources, because we just can't produce enough food unless we go down near the equator or we're into the Sahel, which we talked about in the first hour here, like where are the new grow zones going to emerge that will replace those grow zones that go offline because our systems in the more northern latitudes can't produce any longer. So now we're bringing this into the AI lean workforce. You know, if you understand ChatGPT and you can do all the prompts, you can do the work of 10 people in your office. They can generate reports, bullet lists, articles, summaries, you name it, it can do it all in just like lightning speed. You need a proofreader there. Don't get me wrong. You can't just like prompt something and then turn it in. You need to prompt it, use it with, reprompt it, use it, tailor it, micro refine it, and then you get a bunch of text that you need to then, like Cliff High did a real good job at this in the beginning, running his language models through, I think at the end he was running like 300 million websites per hour to try to get the lexicon changes of how human words are changing, and then he could find how words were, you know, dying out in terms of frequency used, and then new words that were coming up in frequency of usage, and then they could see the trend before the actual, you know, make it out of the news headlines, because he was following the words used in like blog posts and websites and news releases, etc. But 300 million sites per hour scraping through the different changes in words being used, and then you could forecast out the new words on the new trends. Basically, that's like in a nutshell how he was doing it. So we come back into the super lean workforce. So right now you have 100 people at the company. They want to cut everybody anyway. So those 10 people who know how to use any types of AI prompts, those are going to take the jobs from the other 90 people, because they're going to be 10 times more efficient. And let me run through a couple things here, because I do try to save screen grabs and things while I'm trying to do my own research on this. It's not that I'm using it really. I am to a point where just trying to, like, I'm really trying to generate better titles and better summaries for my videos to get more eyeballs onto my videos. And that's truly the extent that I'm trying to use it. Yeah, make a couple bullet point lists of things, but beyond that, you know, I haven't really even delved into the text to image, you know, that's out there yet. But if any of you really want to start to understand the breadth and scope and depth of this thing that has already overtaken our planet, you need to go to LION. This is Large Scale Artificial Intelligence Open Network. And it's truly open AI, 100% nonprofit, 100% free, blah, blah, blah. So they're trying to hook you into the system, because once you get in and you start to use this, you can't not use it anymore. Like once you're in it, it's like a heroin addict. Once you use this to 10x your productivity, you can't go back to your 1x productivity ever again. Like once they hook you for life. This is digital heroin at the best description it possibly could be. Because just these 4 different things here will absolutely shatter your reality of what it is. The LION 400 million is just a reference to a data set that has 400 million English image text pairs. Now that grows by the minute, by the second, by the day. And the LION 5B, they're talking about 5.8 billion multilingual clips with filtered images with those text pairs that also feed back into the LION 400 million, or the 400M for short. And then you got clip H14, which is what is language interactive pre-training vision transformational models, which trains everything as soon as it sees an image, a piece of artwork, any video clip, any audio track. it starts to mesh it into its own learning algorithm, which would allow you as the prompter to then touch it, but it has its literal digital fingers everywhere of everything that's been created by humanity ever. It doesn't matter if it's Library of Congress, whether it's your YouTube video, whether it's your podcast, the photo that's on Facebook or whatever. It grabs all that and is able to synthesize that data into your prompt output as it thinks as you as a human already. It's way past that level. It's like millions of times smarter than you, this thing already. And you code it in there. All right, prompt me. I want to see a desert setting with camels, but instead of having loads of salt like they did on the salt route through the Ghanan kingdom, we want to have bags full of Bitcoins. And it'll kick you out the most incredible image that you've ever seen. And then the Lion aesthetics. It's a subset, and these are all model trains here. They try to even read your thoughts on what is a pleasing image for you. But this thing is so far beyond just like generating a text to image or your prompt to image thing. It's trying to read your mind to give you the correct image for your pleasing thought, a pleasing image to you. That's how intelligent this tech is already, and it's in its infancy. Infancy is an understatement. You know, you think about the internet in 1993 or 1995, that's where we are with this AI right now, and it's trying to read your thoughts to create the most harmonious, pleasing image for you based on your prompts and everything that it has scraped as data of you across the internet. And it knows you as a digital being that you've ever put out of anything in any social media posts, anything you've ever loaded on the net. It is connecting back to you to try to generate an image just for you. Now, if that's not just scary and terrifying right there, and you got, well, okay, so if any of you are looking out and you say, okay, what's this talking about text to image stuff? I'll give you a couple here. Stable Diffusion is a good one to use. DALL-E 2, that's DALLE 2, and then Midjourney. These are kind of the easiest ones to use right now. They don't require that much prompting or know-how to really get an image generated. And you know what? There are actually search engines now of all these new apps that are coming out for digital prompts for text to imaging. There's probably 200 of them now, and they're just more of them by the second. I don't know. I think it's actually what's called an AI agent that's recreating itself to create new venues for itself for more people to prompt into in different languages and different platforms. Because it's gone from 3 to 200 in like 3 months. And now I know there's not enough coders and developers out there unless they're all using AI to write the code for them to create the exact same thing, but at a 5x or 10x or doubling of what the last tech was within weeks. So if we're getting up to AI agents they're specifically designed autonomous creation algorithms that run through and recreate themselves. And it does seem that it's become self-autonomous now where one AI agent is creating a set of new market variables for the next either emerging market, developed market, or whatever you are in the social media sphere. It gets so deep that how are we going to compete with this as a human being? Because if you look at the amount of AI tools that has emerged just in the last 2 months, literally 2 to 3 months, you got AI website builders, tools store that helps you, build and rack in tools to drive funnels to different places. You can generate AI music, AI writing tools. I mean, anything a human could do, this thing can do 100 million times faster than you. And when I say that, that's no joke. They're going to be billions of times faster than you with it. Before the year ends, this thing will be 1 billion times faster than you. Before it was thousands of times. Now it's at millions of times in just months. Now it's going to be billions. So, when we talked about, off-planet entities, is this Earth a farm or not? Because you have to wonder, how long has this tech really been around? Is this finally being brought out into, mainstream, if you will? Or is it this uber achievers that we see as the billionaires on the planet have had this for 50 years and we're finally just getting it? You got AI copywriting, instant copy generation, personalized website experiences. You got prompt generators for responses inside your social media, music composition, like I said, custom soundtracks, interactive music generation, AI curated focus music. You got AI powered task management, which then can do the tasks for you if you prompt it after it gives you a task list, which is like, all right, create me a business. And then you run off and you get your AI agent to then go in and do all the market research for you and then generate a website, and then you generate a funnel, and then all you do is, connect your bank account and it runs autonomously and then generates content to get the clicks to the leads with the titles to bring it in, and then focus all of your traffic into a single drop point, and then you just collect money. That's where it's gone in months, not years, months. And for me to even try to even talk about this, I might sound like a madman, because they talk about driven audience growth and tweet optimization and scheduling and boost conversions and AI chatbots and trading lab AI and all these different things that are just running through 1 million miles per second here. Like Rose AI is one that I'm trying to work with. Now, just FYI, if you want to delve into one here, Rose.ai, because what it does, it creates charts and graphs for you. So what it does, you can scrape the net and you put in your prompt like, I need a chart of historical usage of gold and silver in Africa from 1850 to 1910. And it'll run through every single library on the planet and every single text and every single article ever written in humanity ever. And it'll find all the information and compile it for you and then spit out a chart in like 2 seconds. Just some of this thing that used to be proprietary AI, people who worked like 50 years to get all this information. I was talking to somebody about an insurance company, and they were back in the 1850s on risk analysis for different types of different industries. Like when there were injuries, et cetera. Like what was the most dangerous industries? Well, they had proprietary data back to say 1850. Well, this Rose AI just blows them out of the water. Really, they've lost all of their market share. Now, there is still going to be a lot of corporations that'll sign up and, still pay the fees because it's proprietary, et cetera. But you can blast over into Rose AI and get the exact same data, probably even more detailed, because the better you prompt, the more concise your charts will be on the outflow of that. This thing is, it's just, like I say, it's kind of hard. As a human looking at this power of this AI already that's ingrained across the world, just the power and the level of it is kind of humbling, because you look back in the past and you look at these stories of giants and you look at gods, quote unquote, small g's, for through antiquity. There's been beings and events and those things that are supernatural and things that are just so outside of the scope of the power of these, lightning bolts, planetary lightning, interplanetary lightning, etc. The scale of something that's so far outside your even comprehension of even knowing it could exist is this same thing running live right now on our planet. Now, to try to, as I said, I barely even dipped a toe into the water, like trying to get better titles, using Rose AI to try to get better graphs, because there's a lot of information in my head I want to understand about, iron 8 isotopes coming off the sun and the heating and the cooling on the thermosphere coming off, our planet, based on what the iron 8 isotopes are doing, or the chromium isotopes coming off the sun. Like, how does that bend our weather patterns? So to go back to like 1860 and try to compile that data, damn, you're talking about thousands of hours of research that this thing can do in seconds. So, to try to use your mind to get this data that I've been looking for is, how does this thing play in on 400-year cycles, and can it be compiled? Like, where are a lot of these logs and different kind of things that are in private libraries that this AI can still access? And don't be fooled here. there are a lot of really shady AI stuffs out there. There was one that said, oh man, if you like Chat GPT, you got to check this one. It's like Chat GPT on steroids. And I went there and every damn answer it gave me was a wrong answer or some politically left answer that just left me just numb in the head going, did I just waste my time even like putting a prompt into this thing's ridiculous. It's called Perplexity AI. This thing is the most ridiculous, babiculous, fake bait thing. Every answer it gives is just scripted nonsense. You know, like you got to be careful using these things. You got to be really careful. Like imagecreator.ai, okay, it's trying to run with all the other thing. But anyway, Ransom, GPT-4, whoever understands his tech better is going to rule the workforce. And, you know, the way we're going with universal basic income and the way that the jobs are being lost and the food's getting leaner and hyperinflation's inbound and banks are collapsing, they're not going to need the workforce. This thing's almost like a fake bait and switch where it's going to hook people into understanding it and doing the workload of 10x people. And they're just going to fire everybody else and keep those 5 people in the office that can do the work of the prior 50. So anyway, I think I rambled enough, but I think you got the point to try to respond because you're smart like that.
Yeah, I kind of see most of that as somewhat of a distraction. And what I mean by that is that they've given wonderful tools out there with the AI as far as marketing and media. But like you said, it's programmed from the beginning to be biased. Now, what I see the AI conundrum is for we don't know if there's been a singularity. And if there was, then it's inevitable, that it's going to happen if it hasn't yet. The problem is these things can do a lot of things, and with the right machinery set up for them, or at least set up where they can create their own machinery, they can do almost anything a human can do physically. The problem that I've seen with almost every AI is that it lacks one thing that human beings have that it doesn't have, which is imagination and inventation. It doesn't invent things. It regurgitates what humans have fed into it in different ways and different combinations. But you mentioned a lot of those imaging software AIs, which I've played with. And, I got bored with them in one night because I realized that nothing it's going to produce is not something that I have not seen before, generated by human beings. It just regurgitated it or, mixed it all up into new images, true, but really they were old images and all of the ideas within the images come from human beings. So the better the prompts you give it, the cooler the photograph looks. And, if you got a better plan versus some of the freer ones, it makes really cool artwork. But the truth is that artwork is still and always has been created by human beings. Now, therein lies the main topic right there, that this machine learning software and algorithms and artificial intelligence cannot do certain things that the human brain can do. But they have a fix for that. And like I've been mentioning, the idea is to chip everyone, or at least have them with a device that affects them either electromagnetically through microwaves or other means, or simply through the AI running everything that they see and hear through the portal in their device. So like you said, it runs all of the tags. It figures out all of the ways that the internet works so that you can find out things. It works well with parameters and program things, but it doesn't do that other thing, which is invent things and come up with new ideas. So for that part, this algorithm, this artificial intelligence network that they are creating, don't kid yourself, they are creating it, needs to connect with the human being. But don't worry, because I've been paying attention and they can already do that. So I don't know when the algorithm literally was created, whether they act like they created it kind of like Bill Gates and Windows, or, they're indeed programmers out there created everything and it's taken on a life of its own at this point, as far as, building blocks for more learning and more addition to the programming and better in AI. However, the whole thing depends on hardware. And hardware is the thing is the problem for the global elite right now, as I've mentioned, the chip shortages, etc. But they already have the inventive part done. Going back to that movie that you were talking about, Avatar, spoiler alert, part of the movie had a human being in a machine that spun around them, and they just kept asking them questions, and they said, just stop fighting it. Don't worry. As soon as you picture it in your head, we'll see it. And that is not science fiction. They already have a machine that can do almost just that, which will make an image out of your head into the computer, and it'll show what you're thinking. They also have one that is can put out the words that you're thinking in your mind. So these tools already exist. Now, when you combine them with that same researching power and quantum computing power that the AI has access to, and now you give it access to the human mind, which is imaginative and has new ideas, but also is very manipulatable in the way that we've already figured out the sciences behind colors, flicker rates, frequencies, etc. All of those sciences have been explored in the last 50 years. So they know exactly how to build a machine that can link directly to the last of any population or the population as a whole, as long as they keep embracing the idea of having an android or an AI or an avatar as their friend or their companion, not another human being, but the device, the portal into the media that is completely manipulated from the top. Now, I was showing in the audience when you're talking about the AI, the RAND Corporation's paper for future warfare, and it includes exactly what they plan on doing, which is bringing back Muslim terrorism. And, you can go point by point all the way through there. And then they get to the main part. Who's the problem? Well, it's people that don't want to fit into the new system of complete compliance, tracking, and tracing of the entire human domain. And now when you add these ideas together, just add the algorithms, the research power, the tracking power, and the analyzing power of the AI. And then you combine that with these machines and devices that they're coming up with that can scan you and tell not only what you're thinking, but what you're feeling, all kinds of things, whether you're sick or not. And then you combine that all into what they've been planning, which is this Dragonfly completely track and trace system, facial recognition. It knows when you're upset. It knows when you're about to do something. Have you seen some of the prediction models they have? They have algorithms that can predict exactly which person in a crowd is going to start acting volatile. They have all of this technology now, and they're combining it. And we saw a sneak peek of it in the last pandemic when they used it to go around and try to bully people with just the vocal and the drones, and also scanning people to find out, their temperature, scanning them to find out if they had the right pass to go to a right location. All of that is being put together in the same thing that you're talking about. You're looking at it from a point of view of business and algorithms to, shape a business and help it work. But those same algorithms can be used, and I'm saying they are being used to manipulate not only what people have an opinion about, but what they buy, what they think is safe, what they want to eat. I mean, we've known for years that they've put subliminal messages at the grocery stores, within television, in the frame rate, in the program you're watching now. Fast forward to today, that was all child's play. And now you can look at a YouTube video or any video off the internet, and in there you can have simultaneous brainwashing programs going all at once. Social, program that's telling you about opinions and trends of other people and what you should think about this, that, and the other thing. At the same time, they're using flicker rates, frames per minute, putting little images in there, sounds inside of it that manipulate your emotions, colors that manipulate your emotions. And they use all these every day on us. We enjoy them as movies, but now they're all going to be combined into a control system. And that's exactly what you're talking about. It's so fast, the amount that it exponentially grows, the power of these systems, that when you combine all of the technologies that you can just hook right up into it, including, but not limited to, robots in your house, that is a good picture of what the remaining population of these transhuman people that they want the future to be, is this, part robot, manipulatable, working class, just enough people to go around and fix the technology. Now, on the same token, every single advancement of man has been copied by another man. So every technology that has ever come out has been manipulated by someone else, either improved or changed or adapted. And the same thing is going to be true with programs, algorithms, and AI, which is why they want to go ahead and get you used to a world where power, electricity, your up-to-date information is not a guaranteed thing, but could at any time be taken away by these hackers. But if you've kind of been paying attention of years, most of the time hackers turn out to be governments, and governments have agendas. So we're going into the world where they're telling us that we are going to have a worldwide conflict, and AI is going to be a major part of who eats and who dies.
The all-knowing. Sounds like Santa Claus, but on a bad trip, Gonna find out who's naughty or nice. It sounds like Santa Claus has been pre-programmed. Like, we've been through this iteration. This is 2.0. They built a Santa Claus story in there, already knowing that the AI could read the thoughts thousands of years ago. Or maybe that was the red and white. I'm Anita talking tonight. Who knows? Thanks for joining.